Alrighty, so we're gonna get started. So we've got 2 blocks, a blanket, and a bolster. And we start by just creating a ramp with a medium block, a low block, and then you kind of get this downward slope. I'm gonna start by putting our pelvis nice and close to that bolster. If at any point it feels like the bolster is too much of a stretch for the low back, you just kind of roll off to your side, push yourself up, and you can do the whole series without the bolster. It's lovely for stretching the back, but sometimes it starts to feel like it's too much of a good thing, and then you want to come off it. Always making sure that you can stretch your arms overhead, and it's always a nice idea to be able to stretch your arms out to the side. When you set yourself up, you can be a little bit one up and one down next to your neighbor. And then let your arms come beside you. Let them be nice and heavy on the floor. I always like to pick up my pelvis and just kind of rock it a little bit from side to side and almost feel like I can pull my pelvis away from the low back. And then bringing the pelvis down onto the floor. Let's let our knees touch. And then with the knees together, we're going to heel toe those feet apart as wide as we can without the knees coming apart. And then once we arrive at that depth, we want to pigeon toes slightly so that the baby toe edge of the foot is nice and straight. We're then going to take all 10 of our fingers and we're going to squeeze our shoulders, and we're going to start with nice slow big circles with our elbows. If that feels like too much for our shoulders, we can kind of hover our fingers over our shoulders and make our circles a little bit smaller. Let's go the opposite way with the circles. And then stopping with the circles, we're going to open and close the elbows at a shoulder's height. Arms out beside you, we're going to go up and down with those arms, almost like a jumping jack. And keeping as neutral a neck as you possibly can. And then letting those arms come onto the floor beside you. Just really gently kind of push your elbows and your shoulders down towards the floor, and feel like you could lift the skin of your armpits up towards the sky. Melt your trapezius muscles, which are kind of like a kite-shaped muscle in the back of your neck, down your spine. Let the trapezius muscle kind of melt down your back. And then close your eyes. Start to focus on your body from the inside. Focus on your breath. I'm going to come around with a little bit of aromatherapy. If you'd like to use aromatherapy in your practice, you're going to give me your left hand, and I'll put a couple drops on your hand. You rub your hands together, and then without touching your face, you kind of cup your hands over your nose and mouth and breathe deeply. And when you feel like you've had enough, you just let those arms come beside you. I'm going to use mint to start with. Is anybody allergic to mint? Good. All right, so if you want it, when I come to your mat, you're just going to give me your left hand. You rub your hands. You try not to touch your face because it'll be a little bit stinging if you do, but it will not sting the palms of your hands. And tonight and tomorrow is the last full moon of summer. And it's the harvest full moon. Oh, don't worry about it. It's a harvest full moon. We take it a little bit easy, like we do on all the full moons. And we really focus on just breathing and reflecting on the last 2 weeks since the new moon, the last month since the last full moon. We'll just kind of check in on if we're kind of keeping promises that we've made to ourselves. Particularly as we come to the end of the summer, we want to make sure we did all the things that we wanted to do before the season changes. Really feel that gentle breeze of breath on the inside of your nostrils. And think about expanding your nostrils away from that gentle breeze of breath, making the cave of your nostrils a little bit bigger, more spacious for that breeze of breath to enter and exit through your nose. And as you use your mind to lengthen and slow down your breath, noticing on the inhalation that the breath is just slightly cooler than the exhalation. Noticing with each inhale, the breath enters the nostrils with just a little bit of coolness. And noticing on the exhale, the breath exits just a little bit warmer. Continuously focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. Really feeling that space within your skin. Let's take 10 more big, slow, beautiful breaths, just like that. In and out through your nose. Really encouraging yourself to let go of what no longer serves you. And with each inhalation, inviting in what you truly need. When those 10 breaths are complete, returning once again to your natural breathing. Heel toe your feet in, so they're hips distance apart. I always like to kind of pick up my pelvis between sets and just kind of rock it out. I feel like I can pull it away from the low back. Anytime you want to roll off the bolster, do. And then bringing the pelvis back down onto the mat. Walk your feet away from you a little bit. We're going to come into a number 4 pose. So our left foot is going to push onto the floor. We're going to pick up our right leg, externally rotate. We're going to hook that right ankle on the outside of the left knee. And just kind of opening and closing that knee a few times. Then letting that knee move away from you. You're going to slide that left foot to you, nice and close. Feels like too much of a stretch, you slide the foot away from you. We're then going to interlace our fingers, right hand on top of left. We're going to float those hands right over the sternum. We're going to try and have our elbows, our wrists, and our armpits equal height. And then we're going to flip the palms to us and away from us as we pull those elbows apart. Just letting those shoulders relax away from the ears. Now the next time we flip our palms away from us, we're going to keep the palms facing away from us, And then we're going to inhale to straighten the arms, and then we're going to exhale to bend the elbows, keeping them that shoulders height. Nice inhale to straighten, nice exhale to bend. The next time we straighten those arms, we're going to straighten the arms to hold, relax the shoulders, pull in our bellies, and with a nice smooth inhale, we're going to bring those arms towards the ears. If that feels like too much, you can bend your elbows or you can bring your arms back around a little bit. Anytime you like, you can return those arms to the floor if they get tired. Closing your eyes if that's comfortable, and really start to focus on your breath. With each exhalation, thinking of your body as a little bit of a sponge, and you're going to squeeze out every last little bit of stale air. And with each inhalation, when you think you're full, without forcing or agitating the body in any way, just take another little sip of oxygen. Exhaling to squeeze out every last little bit, and inhaling to invite in whatever you can fit without force. Continuously focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. We're going to take 10 more breaths just like that. Up and down the spine, in and out of your nostrils. When those 10 breaths are complete, you're going to bring those arms back over your shoulders. You're going to bend your elbows. You're going to flip your palms, but keep your fingers interlaced. And then you're going to straighten your arms, folding at the wrists. So nice and slow. You don't want to be folding at the fingers. You want to keep the fingers active, but you're going to straighten your arms, folding at the wrists. So fingers stay as they are. And then pressing the back rib cage into the bolster. Nice inhale. Like we did before, we're going to start to bring the arms towards the ears, but this time the fold is at the back of the hand. And coming to a place that's comfortable to hold and finding your breath. Let's take 5 more breaths just like that, right here. When those 5 breaths are complete, bring those arms back over the sternum, bend your elbows, release those arms beside you, let the palms face up. Again, there's a nice little hack to releasing the trapezius muscles by just really gently pushing the forearms down into the floor. Think about the shoulder heads going over the bolster to the floor, and gently lift the skin of your armpits and the side ribs up. And think about melting your trapezius muscles down your back slightly. We're going to walk that left foot away from us a little bit. We're going to draw that right knee towards our navel, uncross the leg, open up the back of that right knee, and then lower that right leg just halfway so that the knees are level. If this pulls into your back at all, then bend that right knee a little bit as you push into the sole of that left foot. Taking a few more breaths here with that knee level with the opposite knee. Then we're going to lower that leg so it hovers just off the floor. as if it was like a marble size off the floor. And then we're gonna point and flex that right foot. Again, if it feels like too much, just put your foot on the floor. We're then gonna point that foot and we're gonna draw nice big, slow circles. Try not to move your knee if you can help it. Keep that knee pointing straight up towards the ceiling. And then we're gonna change direction with those circles. And then stopping with the circles, we're gonna flex the foot, sole the foot flat. We're gonna curl the toes like they're holding onto a pencil. We're gonna point the foot like a dancer, and then we're gonna flip the toes back to us. Flex, curl, point, and then flip. Flex, curl, point, and flip. Beautiful. Bend that knee, interlace your fingers just over the shin and pull that leg in just to release the hip flexor. Take a few deep breaths into that right hip. Then allowing that right foot to come onto the floor, walk those feet a little bit away from you. We're going to take number 4 on the other side. So left leg comes up, we're going to externally rotate. We're going to hook that ankle on the outside of the knee. And like you're opening and closing a page in a book, you're just going to move that knee to your navel and away from you. Try to keep your hips and your pelvis, low back, really, really still. Just the leg is moving. And then opening that knee away from you as much as is comfortable, we're going to slide that right foot towards us. We're going to do that brain washer with the opposite interlacing. So this time, all the left fingers are going to come on top of the right, the thumbs are going to tap. This time we're going to do our best to keep those pinkies from coming apart. So really kind of pushing the tips of the fingers into the opposite hand. Elbows, wrists, and shoulders are level with the armpits, and we're just going to flip those palms to us and away from us, right over our sternum. And then flipping those palms away, try to keep the shoulders relaxed away from the ears. Nice inhale to straighten the arms out without losing your pinkies. Exhale to bend the elbows. Inhale to straighten, exhale to bend. Again, we're looking for the folding to happen at the wrists. We're trying to keep the fingers nice and stable. The next time you straighten, straighten to hold. Bend the elbows a little bit if it's too much of a stretch on the wrists. Then really pull your belly to your back and push your back floating ribs into the bolster as we inhale to bring our arms towards our ears. And speaking of bolsters, if anybody fancies a bolster for the home practice, I've got bolsters in stock right now. Big, beautiful breaths here. Really using your fingertips, pressing them into the backs of the hands. Let your shoulders melt. Let's take 10 more breaths here. Using your mind to slow down, smooth out each and every one of your breaths. Using that end of the exhalation to squeeze out every last bit of stale air trapped in your body. And use each top of the inhalation as an opportunity to be just a little bit bigger in your breath without force or agitation. Taking one more little extra sip of air. When that's complete for you, lean the back ribs into the bolster to bring your arms back up and over. Bend your elbows, flip your palms. Think about folding at the wrists as you straighten those arms out. Again, keeping those fingers as active as you can, keeping the elbows as bent as you need to, and slowly bringing your arms towards your ears and stopping with the movement anytime you feel like you've got enough stretch. Let's just take 5 more breaths here. Imagine you could pull your elbows away from one another. And imagine you could lift your wrists not only away from one another, but also up and out. So where the crease of the wrist is moving, like it's being pulled by a stick towards the curvy bit of the back of the wrist. And that's how we start to get a really nice forearm release. When that feels complete, you're going to draw those arm bones back up over the shoulders, bend your elbows, release your arms onto the earth. Walk that right foot away from you a little bit so it's more like a 90-degree angle in the knee. Draw the left knee towards your navel, uncross, open up the back of the knee, and just lower that knee so the knees are level. Pushing very firmly into that right foot, taking some breaths here. At any point this core work pulls into your back, just bend your knee a little bit or come off the bolster. From here, we're going to lower that left leg so it arrives just hovering right off the floor, and then we're going to point and flex that left foot. And then pointing your toe, try to keep your knee pointing up as you make slow circles with your foot. Again, leg as still as it can be. You're just moving at the ankle. Leg isn't moving at all as we make those circles. And then we're going to change direction with the circles. And then finishing up with flex the foot. Then keeping the foot flexed, we're going to curl the toes. And then keeping the toes curled, we're going to point the foot. And then keeping the foot pointed, we're going to flip the toes. Then we're going to flex the foot, we're going to curl the toes, we're going to point the foot, we're going to flip the toes. One more round, flex, curl, point, and flip. And from there, push into your right foot as you bring that left knee up, interlace your fingers, left hand on top of right over that shin, and just start to pull that leg to you as you gently lift your elbows and pull them apart. Taking some nice, big, beautiful breaths into that left hip. Let's go 5 more breaths here. When those 5 breaths are complete, let your foot come down, pick up your pelvis, give it a little wiggle. And then you can choose whether or not you want to be in a creeper pose, which is more of a hip strengthener and an ankle stabilizer. It soles the feet on the floor, big toe mounds down, baby toe mounds down, inner heel down, knees nice and wide. So this is a pre-rec. Once we kind of feel like we're pretty good at this, we can move it into a cobbler. And in our cobbler, we want that same connection of pushing the big toe edge of the foot against the opposite big toe edge of the foot. Arms out beside you, push into your elbows, lift your armpits, and relax your shoulders to release the trapezius muscles. Close your eyes. Gently broadening your nostrils. Slow down your breath. as you really use your mind to lengthen and deepen each inhale and each exhale. If at any point you need to swap up your posture, feel free to do so. Going into a creeper, or perhaps back into the snowplow that we started with, anytime you feel you need to. And then once you find the rhythm of the breath, let's begin to count. Inhale, breath expanding, 1. Exhale, breath contracting, 1. Inhale, breath expanding, 2. Exhale, breath contracting, 2. So on and so forth. Continue to count each and every one of your breaths. Breath, counting, counting, breath. Continue to focus on your body from the inside, focusing on that gentle movement of the breath within your still body as you continue to count each and every one of those waves of breath. When those 10 breaths are complete, returning once again to your natural, uncontrolled breath. Firing up your feet, firing up your legs. Really pull your belly in. I like to use my hands on the outside of my thighs to help myself draw those knees together so I can keep my groins nice and released. Pushing into our feet, we're going to wiggle our pelvis one more time. Then we're going to move our pelvis to one side as we roll off to the opposite side, and we're going to push ourselves up. We're going to come into a tabletop position. If you got a blanket there, it can be really nice to put the blanket underneath your knees. And if you have sensitive wrists, having blocks underneath your hands is also very nice, right? So if your wrists are something you're working on strengthening, you can have the palms of your hands down and you can wrap your fingers around and squeeze the blocks with your fingers. If your wrists are feeling all good, you can have your hands on the floor, but making sure that the base of the index is on the earth and not lifted. I don't want to be able to slide my finger into the palm of your hand. I want the circumference of the palm to be down, almost like a suction cup on a window. We want to think of externally and internally rotating our arm bones to start with. So with our palms down, we see what our range is on rotation. So we can externally rotate, we can internally rotate. And just finding that range. And then what we want to do is kind of find a compromise in the middle. So we're going to externally rotate the upper arm bones, and then we're going to try and internally rotate the lower arm bones so we arrive at a little bit more of a neutral rotation. We're then going to move those humerus bones in and out of our shoulder sockets a few times. This can be just a really nice, quick, effective way just to release the neck. It also teaches us about stability in the shoulders. And we want to stop with those arm bones, not all the way into the shoulders, not all the way out of the shoulders, but just that place where it feels nice for your neck to hang out. I like to take a little bit of time here and knead my toes like a cat kneads its claws. And I'm going to kind of almost feel like I'm pigeon-toeing my feet slightly like I did in snowplow so that I'm getting the fascia and the stretching on my baby toe and my second toe and not just my big toes all the time. Then once I've got a nice grip on those toes, I'm going to exhale to curl my spine, thinking angry kitty. And then my shoulders are going to go back. I'm going to move my butt up, and I'm going to look up for cow. So exhaling, curling the spine, thinking angry kitty. And then shoulders back, sit bones lift, gazing up. And just getting as much movement into your spine as is comfortable for you. As we do this, keeping an eye on those elbows and seeing if you can keep them in that position we started with. And then stopping with a nice straight spine, toes tucked, pull in your belly, and just nice and slow, start to bring your weight back into your heels. Now, if you feel your knees, you just bring your weight forward a little bit with your seat. We're looking for a toe stretch here, but we don't want to sacrifice our knees. Now, if the toe stretch isn't enough and we're looking for more stretch, we can start to walk our hands towards our knees and push our hands into the floor. Some of us might even be able to sit back on those toes, shoulders back, heart center lifts, and just finding our breath here. But it's more about sitting on the heels, even if you have to be forward, than it is about kind of coming up. We want to keep our seat as close to the feet as we can. We want to let the weight stretch the toes. Let's take 5 more breaths here. Say goodbye to your bunions. Or at least don't get new bigger ones. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, coming forward, keeping those toes tucked, bring your hands back into a tabletop position and just slide that foot away from you. And then you're going to press back into your heel to get that nice deep Achilles stretch into the back of the knee, but it shouldn't be sharp. Keeping a nice straight spine and lifting up the back of the skull so we're strengthening our neck as we do this. And then we're going to swap it up, so opposite knee's going to straighten, and we're going to push back into that opposite heel. Again, nice big Achilles stretch. A little bit of tugging to the back of the knee is fine, but it shouldn't be painful. If it's painful, you just bend your knees a little bit. And then from here, we're going to do what we call an up dog foot. So we point our feet so that all 10 toenails are down, and then we pull those toes to us just slightly so we get a small lift in the ankle. Okay, so we've got our feet pointed, and then we just pull our toes to us just a little bit, so there's a tiny little lift in the ankle. It's not like this, right? It's just a tiny little lift in the ankle. And then you're going to keep that lift in the ankle. You're not going to move your feet, and you're going to start to make circles with your hips. The knees are going to stay that hips distance apart, even though they want to kind of slip away from one another, and that way we're stirring up the IT bands. If our wrists are sensitive, we're going to keep our seat back, kind of more over our feet. If our wrists are not sensitive, we're going to start to bring our shoulders more over our hands to get a little more wrist stretch. Again, great opportunity to strengthen that neck away from that texting position. Lift up the back of the skull like the back of the skull is full of helium, so your neck becomes a soap dish. And then change direction with the circles. Always listening to your wrists and grabbing those blocks if you need to. We should never feel our knees or our wrists in yoga. Oh, we forgot to do the balls this week. We're going to do that. We'll do it next week. Don't let me forget, Joni. I've got more here. And then stopping with those circles, knees and feet at hips distance apart. Keep the lift in your ankles, and just like we did before, see if you can start to bring weight into those feet. It's more about the lift in the ankles than it is about sitting back. Just see, maybe you can bring your hands closer. Maybe you can sit right back onto those heels. Sometimes it's helpful to put the feet on the blanket, especially if we've got something going on there, right? Or just bringing those hands back down to the floor.
You should feel like the top of the foot, basically, so your toes, you know.
Some people will, yeah. It's just strengthening the foot. It's muscles, really. You might get a little bit of a stretch, too. And then once that's complete for you, bring your hands back down onto the floor, shoulders distance, tuck those toes, straighten out your leg, push into your heels, and then come forward into your toes. Just going back and forth from that Achilles stretch, and then you push the heel forward to find a nice toe stretch. And then swapping legs. Always floating the back of the skull, so we're continuously strengthening the neck. And then both knees down, back into that tabletop. Think of an external rotation of the upper arm. Think of an internal rotation of the lower arm. Wrists are as wide as the shoulders. There should be absolutely no lift in the base of the index. With our toes tucked, we take our seat back and we push into our hands and our feet. And this is a wonderful posture. We call this puppy posture. We want to definitely make sure that we're really engaged in our puppy and understanding it. And then if we have no neck and shoulder issues, we can take that puppy and turn it into a down dog by lifting our knees. But odds are we're going to keep our knees bent for a little bit, floating in the air so that we can really straighten out the shoulders. And then gradually, if it feels appropriate, we can start to straighten the legs and slide the calves towards the floor. Not all the way necessarily. So that's a forward fold. So we're doing a down dog. So with a down dog, most people's down dogs are going to look like this, Randy, where the heels are lifted. And you just think about sliding the heels to the floor. Some bodies, they're going to come down to the floor in a down dog, but it's more like a top of the house, kind of like roof, as opposed to a forward fold. The big important thing is that the base of the index is down and that all 10 of those fingers are rooting. Right? You can take your puppy pose anytime you like by bringing your knees back down to the floor. Let's go 10 more breaths here. Once those 10 breaths are complete, we're going to drop down onto our knees and we're going to point our feet. We're going to take a nice supported child's pose. So you take your 2 blocks like that and you put your bolster on top and you kind of come forward so that your knees are kind of around the bolster. And I like to have my blanket, you know, kind of more of like supporting my knees so that they're not going to get on the edge because I'm picky. And then you just kind of pull that bolster in as close as you can to your belly so that your belly is resting on the bolster. Unless you're pregnant, Naomi, then you don't do that. You could do it here. Some of us, our butt is going to be a little bit further away from our feet like this, right? But then you start to bring those blocks and bolster closer, so eventually your heels are going to be quite close to your seat. But we don't want to feel those knees, but we do want to get an ankle stretch here. If it's too much for your neck to be looking off to one side, you can just stack your hands underneath your forehead and look straight down at the bolster. But for most of us, looking off to one side will feel really nice. Anytime you start to feel your knees, we can come forward into that tabletop position, straighten out our knees like we learned to do before, and really find our breath. And then come back into the posture when you feel ready. I can always give you a blanket for behind the backs of the knees if you feel like you need some more support. Just like we did before, really focusing on the body from the inside and focusing on your breath. Treating your body a little bit like a sponge. And on that exhale, you want to kind of squeeze your torso using your muscles to push out every last little bit. And then with the inhalation, when you think you're full, just taking another little baby sip of air. Your lungs are very, very precious, and so we want to make sure that we're not forcing them in any way. Just encouraging them to get stronger and to grow organically. Inhale, breath expanding, 1. Exhale, breath contracting, 1. Inhale, breath extending, 2. Exhale, breath contracting, 2. Inhale, breath expanding, 3. Exhale, breath contracting, 3. And so on and so forth. Continue to count each and every one of your beautiful waves of breath. Focusing on the expansion and contraction of your breath within your body. As we continue to count each When those 5 breaths are complete for you, hands underneath the shoulders, you're gonna push yourself up. You're gonna come into a tabletop position. And you can either open up your knees and your ankles in a tabletop position, nice neutral neck, or you can take it into another down dog. Whatever you're doing, you wanna make sure the circumference of the palm is down, all the fingers are rooted, that you've got a nice external rotation of the upper arm and internal rotation of the lower arm, and that it feels nice on your shoulders. Just finding your breath. Again, tabletop or a down dog, whatever you prefer. Imagine you could go to your shoulders and you could roll them away from your temples. And then the under part of your arm and your shoulder comes towards your temple. So the top of your arm is rotating away from your temple, and sort of the armpit of your arm is rotating to the temple. So it's a really nice external rotation at the upper arm. And then think about screwing the caps of a jar inward with your lower arms. Like you're taking 2 mason jars and you're screwing them in. Let's take 10 more breaths here. Feel free to come down and take a puppy pose if you need to, as we work on bone density. When those 10 breaths are complete, you're going to drop down onto your knees. You're going to walk your hands to your knees to lift your knees. You're going to walk your hands to your feet, knees and feet at hips distance apart. You're going to put your hands on your knees and you're going to straighten out your arms. So arms are straight, spine is straight, and then we're just going to imprint and arch our low back a few times here. Just getting that nice, gentle movement. And staying here with a nice neutral spine is a wonderful option. If you want to go a little bit deeper and you can keep your spine nice and straight, you can put your elbows on your knees and press the hands to one another. Remembering that we want to prioritize the straight spine versus getting the elbows low. And then just see if you can rock forward and back just a little bit on your feet. Pull your belly towards your back. And then once you find those feet really firm on the floor, let's have our elbows on our knees. Let's have our knees nice and bent. So straight back. Push into those elbows, lift up into the back of the skull, and try and move your seat and your knees back. Now without moving your elbows or changing your spine, you're going to slide your seat up an imaginary wall, and you're going to slide your calves down towards your heels. Just keeping those elbows resting on tops of the knees. We're not going to completely straighten our legs, but we are going to focus on keeping our back straight. And once we arrive here in this nice forward fold, feel the weight coming forward into the toes and the toe mounds, so you're not just dumping it into the heels. And let's take 10 more breaths here. One of the best things that we can learn to do is to forward fold without straining our back or our hamstrings. And the best way to do that is to learn how to keep your back straight and to keep your knees bent. It's very, very rare that a body benefits from a standing forward fold with straight knees. It's a very rare body type. And the second thing that we can learn a lot about forward folds is how to come up into standing without getting dizzy. So there's kind of like a magic trick to that too. You bend your knees a lot, right? You put your hands on your knees and you straighten out your arms and you imagine that you're doing a push-up with your arms and you're pushing those knees away from you. You lift up your head a little bit so the neck is neutral. You press into those feet, you pull into your belly. And then once you find those arms really strong like a push-up, you take them away from your knees, but you keep thinking arms strong like a push-up, and you push down hard with your legs. That's how we learn to come up without getting dizzy. We're gonna flip those palms forward, shoulder heads back. If you don't feel dizzy, you're gonna close your eyes and just find your breath. And often we feel a little bit buzzy, a little bit energized from all that yoga work. The bulls tend to put a little energy, fire underneath our butts. We're just finding some nice breaths here. Then when you're ready, we're gonna take our blocks and we're gonna put them in front of us. You may wanna turn on your mat so that you're lengthwise. So if you kind of spin, so instead of facing to the room, you're facing to the side, so you've got a nice long mat in front of you. We're gonna bring our thighs to touch, and we're gonna have those blocks in front of us. Have those blocks so they're about a shoulder's distance apart, like they would be in a down dog. Then with our thighs touching, we're gonna put our hands on our hips, and we're gonna pull those elbows back. We're gonna think of a great big bowling ball in our belly, and we're gonna pull our belly away from that bowling ball. And then we're gonna step our right foot out, we're gonna step our left foot out. And that's as wide as we're gonna go. We're not gonna go any wider than our first stance. And then we wanna pigeon toe the baby toe edge of the foot, right? So the baby toe edge of the foot is nice and straight. If we had sciatic nerve stuff where we had a kind of tight pulling into the center of our butt, we'd pigeon toe more. But if we don't have that going on, we don't need to. And then just like we did in the previous posture, we're gonna slide our hands down to our knees. We're gonna keep our knees very, very bent, and we're gonna find our arms straight like we're doing a push-up. And then we're gonna find a nice neutral neck. And then we move the knees and the butt back, but we find the weight even in the feet. Now pushing into the baby toe edge of the foot, push into your big toe mound, push into your inner heel, and use your imagination to pull your armpits and your hip flexors away from one another, so you're learning how to traction your back. Right? We're really looking to avoid a hunch in the mid-upper back. And we're also looking to avoid dropping the head and getting that texting neck that we do in life, right? The hunch in the back and the texting neck are habits that we have outside this room, and they're habits that for a happier life we probably want to reverse. So we want to make sure that they don't creep into our yoga practice. And so I visualize that I've got a nice bit of helium in the back of my skull, and I'm going to lift up the back of my skull. Now Keith, you stay there, hey? The rest of us, if we want to go deeper, we can put our hands on our blocks, right? We can have our 10 fingers gripping the blocks. We can have our palms on our blocks. The knees are still nice and bent. If our wrists are sensitive, we can move our wrists ahead of our shoulders. If our wrists are not sensitive, we can put them right underneath our shoulders. We're going to push down into our hands. We're going to squeeze those blocks. And then we're going to think about sliding our hamstrings up a wall, sliding our calves down towards our heels without changing our back. And nobody really in this room needs to straighten their legs, right? It's kind of the myth that you get a better forward fold with the straight knee. You get a way better forward fold for your back with a little bit of a bend in your knee. The minute you straighten, you start to get that hunch in your back. And then from here, if we want to go further, if this is already enough of a stretch, we stay here. If we want to go further, we keep our back straight and we just bend our elbows straight back so that our spine doesn't change, our pelvis doesn't change, and we go forward by moving our elbows straight back. If that's too much, we just keep those arms straight. Continuously pulling the armpits forward and continuously moving the hip flexors back. Decompressing our spine. Growing taller with age instead of shorter. Let's go 10 more breaths here if we can. Press into those feet. When those 10 breaths are complete for you, you're going to straighten out your arms. You're going to bend your knees. You're going to put your hands back onto your knees. Find the weight in the feet. So again, really, really bent knees, really, really strong arms. Pull in your belly. Take a couple big breaths here. And when we come up, we're gonna push hard into those legs, and we're gonna keep our arms really strong like we're doing a push-up. And then we just push hard into our legs, and we don't get dizzy. And then we're gonna heel, toe it in until our feet are at hips distance apart. We're gonna flip those palms forward, shoulder heads back. Close your eyes if you're comfortable and find your breath. And then when you're ready, we're gonna bring our thighs to touch. You can turn and face me again. And we're gonna take our block, we're just gonna place it in front of our right foot. And it can be on high height, it can be on medium height, it can be on low height, whatever you fancy. Just slightly ahead of our toe on the right foot. Hands on the hips, elbows back. We're gonna squeeze those elbows. We're gonna bend both knees. We're gonna pull our belly towards our spine. We're gonna lift that right heel and we're gonna put the right foot, like a Barbie foot, onto that block, and we're gonna push down onto that block. We're gonna pull those elbows back. Odds are this right hip is lifted, so I want you to visualize you got a chair under that right butt, and you're gonna sit that right butt down into a chair. Good, pull those elbows back. Now press hard into both feet. Nice. Almost feel like you could push the back of the skull into a wall and the forehead into a wall. Just keep on breathing here. Imagine you could crush that block with your toes. Let's go 5 more breaths. Fix your gaze on one point. Don't let your eyes move, and just flex your foot over that block. Just flex your foot, nothing else changes. Don't move your eyes. Ten more breaths. Excellent. Bring your foot back down. That is touch. That's the best I've ever seen you guys do. Bravo. Take a couple breaths here. And so the trick to balance is it's not being like a tree like this. It's being like a tree like this, you know? A tree without the wind, balance is better. When we're new, right? We can do it on a nice sunny day. And then we're gonna move so that the block's in front of the left foot. Hands on the hips, elbows back. So another trick is when we got those elbows squeezing, we're keeping the structure of our spine. We balance better here than we do here. Our head's really heavy. And if it's not over our tailbone, it's gonna off-center our balance, right? So put a ball between your elbows, squeeze it, pull in your belly, bend your knees, lift that left heel. Pull in the belly, fix your gaze, and then see if you can put that left foot onto the block. And then imagine that there's a chair under that left butt and sit into it. Press hard into both feet. Don't move your elbows, don't move your shoulders. Pull your belly towards your back. Now in yoga we call it a dristi. It's a focus point. So find one thing. It could be a spot on the floor, could be something else, but just find a spot where you can fix your gaze and don't move your eyeballs. Let's take 5 more breaths here. Push both feet down as if you're trying to push one foot through the mat and one foot through the block. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, don't change a thing, just flex your foot. Nothing else changes. Don't move your spine, don't move your pelvis, just flex. Ten more breaths. When those 10 breaths are complete, bring your foot back. Good stuff. Move your blocks, foot's out of the way. Let those palms face forward, shoulders back. Beautiful breath. Really feel your feet firm on the floor. All right, one more set. Hands on hips, elbows back, bring those thighs to touch, pull in your bellies, push your head back. Remember, it's heavy if it comes forward. Balance is gonna be off kiltered. Bend your knees, lift just your right heel. Find that dristy point, fix your gaze on one thing and just float that knee up as high as you can. So as we move into fall, it's standing poses, standing poses, standing poses. We'll be so glad we did so many boats in the summer, because we're all a lot stronger than we were. 10 more breaths, you got this. When those 10 breaths are complete, bring that foot down so you can get those thighs to touch. Bend both knees, pull in your belly, squeeze a ball with your elbows. Lean into the back of the skull, lift the left heel, don't move your eyeballs, lift your knee. Float from the back of the leg, like there's a little helium balloon lifting your hamstring, lifting the back of your knee. And that's how we walk down the stairs, by lifting from the back body. Then our knees are gonna love us. We won't get knee pain hiking down a hill. Right, we need to float the backs of our knees. Let your quads have a vacation, find your hamstrings. We're almost there. And release, be the hips distance apart, palms forward, soften your knees, close your eyes if it's comfortable, and breathe. So your mission for the fall, should you choose to accept it, is you're gonna brush your teeth on one foot. And it should be 2 minutes, so you can brush it a minute per side. Change your hand too, if you can. Really mess with yourself. So from here, we're gonna come down onto the floor and we're gonna do legs up the wall. So legs up the wall, I'm gonna grab a mat, just because it's easier if you see me do it. There's a hack. So the hack, I'm going to come beside you, Neil, but I'll move. I'm not going to stay. You can have your blanket handy. You can put your blanket under your head or under your pelvis. If you want to put a bolster under your pelvis, that's like my favorite thing. So have both kind of handy. And so the trick to driving straight is that you lay on the edge of your mat so your body's on the floor, right? I'm gonna have all my little camping equipment. So my feet touch the wall and my hip touches the mat and my shoulder touches the mat. So this gives me my range, right? Some of us, our range is here, but not most of us. Most of us, our range is more like here, so that when we roll onto our backs, our pelvis doesn't lift. We can straighten our legs and you see I'm straight. The goal is not to get your butt to the wall, it's to have the right amount of stretch for your body. If I'm too close and my body does this, that would be very, very naughty, right? If I wanted to elevate my belly, it's great for digestion, it's a little less intense, and I prefer it if I'm breathing. Then I'm gonna bend my knees, keep my ankles, knees, and hips in a straight line. I'm gonna push into my feet, lift up my pelvis, slide my bolster under, straighten my legs, and then I could add a little push here too, because on full moons and new moons, we're just supposed to kind of baby ourselves a little bit, right? When I want to come out, I bend my knees, I lift my pelvis, I then can hug my legs. If at any point it feels like too much, you just bend your knees, right? So when you're ready, your mat's at the wall, you get your butt and your hip on one edge of the mat, and you get your shoulder on the same edge of the mat, your legs are on the floor, and then you just roll onto your back.
You don't have to have the balls.
You do not. So I like the bolster if I'm working digestion, or if I'm working with breathing, so soft bolster lungs. If I'm looking for structure, like a stretch, then I'm gonna do legs up the wall without a bolster. Right, so it's totally up to you, whatever you fancy. The cush is nice, but we have done a lot of cush, so if you prefer it to be non-cushy, by all means, go for it. I'll come around with another smell. I'm gonna give you guys thieves oil. If you don't want it, you don't give me your left hand.
Yep, that one too.
Yeah. This way, if you twist your mat and your pelvis in, your head will be on the mat too. And if I were you girls, I would put one of my mats under your mat.
Okay.
It's just so much cushier and more comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. I have like the thickest mat in the world and it's just worth it. But if you don't have the thickest mat in the world, just grab two. That's why we have so many of them.
So you're trying to do neutral pelvis?
Yes, you are. Yeah, a little bit of a back bend. And you're trying to make your big toes and your baby toes level. So if you want thieves oil, you can give me your left hand. If you don't want it, don't give me your hand. And this is an immune system booster. A little bit on the left hand. You don't want to touch your face with it. And so one of the practices that I really recommend in a dream world on a weekly basis is legs up the wall for as long as you can. It's very, very good for us. Even better if you do it in a steam room or a sauna. At any point it's fatiguing, just bend your knees, give them a hug, and then you can put them back on the wall in a bent knee position if you like. Bless you. Right back to your breath. If you found counting your breaths useful, do that. It can be a wonderful way to learn how to control the mind. If you prefer mantra, stating your intention over and over and over, also a very good way to control the mind. Continuously focusing on your body from the inside. Focusing on your breath. And taking 10 more breaths, just like that. When those 10 breaths are complete for you, if you're on a bolster, you can bend your knees, push your feet firm into the wall as you remove the bolster. And then everybody's going to give their legs a nice big hug. And when it feels like you've gotten enough release from that hug, you can roll off to the side and make yourself all comfortable in the Shavasana. It's always nice to put a bolster underneath your knees and a blanket underneath your head. By deepening your breath, wiggling your fingers and your toes. With a nice big inhale, stretch those arms. And exhale to let those arms fall down heavy as you start to bend your knees, walking your feet towards your seat. Eventually rolling off to the side to push yourself up to make your way into a nice comfy seat. Something that works for your knees and your back. Something basic is good. Hands coming into Namaskara. Let's end with a nice big group Om before we dedicate the merit of our practice. Om. May we use this class to be mindful that through gratitude, we create the most fertile soil upon which we plant seeds of intention. Thank you so much for joining me today, sharing your practice, and planting some seeds. Namaste. 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 Namaste to Chandra. Such a good girl. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. You're welcome. I won't be here next Monday. Jeremiah's gonna look after you guys. I'm gonna be on Hornby, squeezing the last bit out of summer.